Welcome to Shell Talk, where we're here to talk about the turtles are back in New York. What? What's that about? Who knows?
Welcome to the Dicta's Den.
All right. Well, this is a special story arc, as last episode we talked about how the Eastman and Laird worked on different issues. So two of the issues we talked about were Eastman's, and two of the issues were about Laird's, where each of them, mainly focused on working on them. But they reunited, and then they didn't work on Turtles again for nearly like 30 issues later. And so this is a special 3-issue arc called Return to New York. Eastman mainly did layouts for the first of this 3 issues. Laird did the layouts for the second one. And it's interesting because some of the different stylings when reading it. But then also they worked together on the last one. And so... But interesting because I definitely think it showed that they worked together on these, which is very cool and very action-packed as well. So
very out there too.
There's some stuff that happens, and so
yeah.
But let's get right on into it. As the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles return to New York, which begins in issue 19. Where we see Raphael is sleeping in the sewer tunnel, kind of in a Ronin-esque outfit in a sort. It's like it's not your typical outfit, so that definitely stood out to me. And then we see this flashback of like, well, what was happening there? We see the Turtles. They're arguing about their situation as it's now been a year since they've been out on the farm.
In Northampton.
So been a year since Shredder beat them. And Raph is saying, well, he's ready to go back to New York. He's ready to, the place is driving him nuts of being kept up there. He's wanting to go out there and do stuff. He's calling Leo, saying that he's not capable of being a leader anymore. And so here we get that big contention of, well, who's really the leader of the Turtles, which is interesting. And Raph picks a fight with Leo, claiming that he's not fit to, lead the Turtles anymore. And we see that Raph ends up beating Leo there, leaving him hurt, and leaves his fellow brothers, where I didn't mention it, but all the other Turtles there were quite content staying there in Northampton. Nobody else felt that need like Raph to go back to New York. So anyway, Raph leaves them, and we cut back forward in time to the sewers, where we then see that there's Foot Clan running around in the sewers, and Raph then wakes up and starts following them, and that's where we get this huge action scene as he starts fighting one wave, and then he starts fighting this other wave that comes marching in. Big, gorgeous action sequence. Kudos to all the art with all these issues, as I swear half of it are action, and that's why I feel like I don't have much to say about these just because it's so much action involved with them. But it's a lot of great action sequences, though. But anyway, he does end up finding somebody else, so that ends up coming out of this water. We just see this big figure come out of the water. You can't tell who they are. We then cut, and we find the other Turtles are in New York. They're tracking where did brother Raph go, and so they're tracking him. And then they go back into their old hideout, and that's where they find Raphael is waiting with an old friend, which is if you remember all the way back in our third Shell Talk episode with the Turtles out in space. There's a Triceratons. And we found out that one of those Triceratons is there. And yeah, kind of crazy. We find out that since issue 7, there's a Triceraton stranded on Earth in New York. And we see him there. Quite the reveal, as that's certainly not who I was expecting to see there.
No. No,
That was
I
very
was
cool.
expecting like a Spike or Leatherhead, someone new, someone we haven't
Yeah.
seen yet necessarily.
Well, Raph, if I remember right, though, he was like, it's a familiar scent, though.
That's true. He did say it was someone he had seen, so it had to have been someone that. That's why, yeah. I don't know who else it could have been then.
That's very fair because, we're talking about a point where they haven't been to New York since like what, issue 12,
Yep.
if I remember right, when they left, and we were just talking about the space arc, which is 4 issues, so it's like, who else would have been in the waters, right? Because I can't. I suppose you're right though. Of like, I can't think of anyone that necessarily would have fit that
Unless it
bill.
was Shredder, I mean,
Yeah.
Shredder hiding underwater. I mean, although I'm gonna say with what we see later in this episode, it could have been. Anyway, that's all I'm gonna say.
Right. Yeah. It's funny though, because it's my first thought was like, is it like a Krang of sorts that?
Oh yeah.
Because we haven't reached the point in the comics where we see Krang in the way that we know of Krang.
Yep.
But later on, though, we do know of Krang and being in a big body, and that was my very first thought. But
which is funny that you say that because of, again, later in this episode. Anyway,
interesting things that happened. But yeah,
yes.
This was ultimately, though, as Eastman was calling it, the setup of, well, they had to get the Turtles back in New York so they could get this arc going. And this was just an ultimate setup. But I do think that we got some good character contention between the Turtles at the beginning.
Yes.
Before it went all out to the action. And I think that was definitely very good. Seeing, Raph being the lone one, as always. But the Turtles always want to stick together, and the Turtles want to stick together, I think, is a prominent part of this story arc, especially that comes into play in the 3rd issue a good bit. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's like this is just a nice setup issue. Like, I mean, it's great action. We definitely heavily focused on Raphael, which is cool. Seeing the Triceraton was a nice surprise. I did think finding him was cool, especially because I mean I thought they were cool, and so seeing him back was neat.
Yeah, it definitely is interesting. That's what they chose to do.
Yeah, and that was a Peter Laird idea. I don't remember if I mentioned that before or not, but that was a Peter Laird idea that the Triceraton was just there. So very interesting.
And it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so you don't really need any explanation. Like, there's Mutant Ninja Turtles, so I mean,
and you can have mutant soldier Triceratopses.
Yeah. and aardvarks.
Yeah. There's all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Never a lack of wonky mutated creatures.
Correct.
But anyway, let's move on.
So,
issue 20, we learn that the Triceraton's name is Zog, who speaks in this like 3rd person the entire time.
And I love how they visualized how he talks in the artwork and the bubbles and stuff. It's silly.
Unique way of doing the bubbles for sure, which I like. But I found this interesting though. Of we see Zog speak in the 3rd person, and I don't recall saying the Triceraton's necessarily speaking.
No, I think he's just a very special Triceraton.
I got left, but yeah,
so like, that's why part of the reason he might have been left behind, not on purpose by them, but by accident of him, like going astray.
Yeah,
I don't think the Triceratons are that mean that they just left him behind because he's special.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. It definitely stood out to me though, because I'm like, wait, he's there, okay, or not there, but like just
look. All I want to know is, does he have a red shirt on?
Well, we'll get back to that later, I guess.
Yes.
But anyway, he's saying like, while speaking in the 3rd person, that like, we can help the Turtles, follow me, and all that stuff, or Zog can help. And so anyway, he ends up leading the Turtles to ambush the Foot Clan, which ends up being one of their main control centers. And we see, Donatello's on the computer system there, and he's like, "Oh wait, we can access all this special information." I find that he finds out the Hudson Block is a false front, and he believes Orokusaki must be there, aka Shredder. So we then actually get kind of a cool little transition where the Turtles and Zog are at the point they're about to infiltrate the Hudson Block, and they enter in. No problems at all. They enter into the vault. They cut through the vault, and then that's where they find a secret foot operation, where I believe is Leo. He's like, "All right, guys, be quiet. Gotta." Come in quiet and stealthy, gotta do this tactically, right? And then what happens? Zog just charges in and leads the attack.
Now you have to remember that Zog thinks that these are his enemies from space, I believe. I don't think because he says, where does he goes rushing in and goes, he screams something. Long live the Republic!
I remember. See, that was something I was trying to figure out when I read.
So I think he's a little delusional and thinks he's because there's also a part where Raph is like trying to explain to them he still thinks he's at war, and he calls him like General Zoraf and stuff. He refers to Raph as a general. So I think part of it is because Commander Zoraf. He says Commander Zoraf, perimeter secure, awaiting further orders.
Yeah,
and he coughs a lot. He cough.
Yeah, that makes sense because I was trying to figure out a lot like what his main motivation was.
Yeah,
and we never got necessarily a direct answer to that. But I think with your explanation, that makes a lot of sense, especially with how we see him. And I think it probably could have just been a case too, where maybe he just got heavily injured and he woke up not being able to.
That's a good point too. He has no idea where he was, and thought he was still where he was. Yeah.
And I remember too, the war that we actually see was very weird as well, involving, if I remember right, some sort of like humanoid figures as well.
Yes.
So it makes sense that you would be confused them that way. But yeah, it's definitely a very interesting point indeed. But anyway, Zog leads the attack. We get this huge sequence of him and the Turtles fighting together. They then crash into what looked like a training dojo.
Yeah, it looks like a dojo of sorts, yeah.
Special training dojo, and there's just so much action involved with this. Absolutely beautiful artwork. But then after that fight, they find this cargo bay, and that's where they take like this vehicle and trailer, where they then drive through the tunnel and crash into the next area, taking on more foot soldiers. Lots more action there as well. And Zog goes onwards while the Turtles are still fighting. And then from behind, we see what looks like a shredder that kills Zog.
No, not Zog! No.
But anyway, the Turtles follow his trail of blood, finds his body, but finds 3 weirdly shaped shredders. Which, yeah, was definitely something interesting. Yeah.
Not on my bingo card.
Not at all. Yeah. Shredder, 3 weird looking shredders. I definitely read this. I was like, what the heck?
Yeah. Again, I was expecting something like Krang.
Yeah, who knows when Krang actually ends up making a big appearance again.
Fuck. I mean, you have to think that they have something to do with this. Mutated, the Ooze, they were the company that the TRCI or whatever they are called. And so it's all connected. It's all connected, man. Aliens.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting because we do kind of get a hint as far as the things that happened in the next issue. But yeah, like this issue, Zog was definitely the highlight of it as he was leading the Turtles around, and it was cool to see that character up in the forefront. Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Zog.
But yeah, we're learning more about they're going after trying to find Shredder, and now we get 3 of them, which are quite interesting.
I love the little one.
Yeah, it
Might as well just jump into the next issue.
yeah, I was going to say this. Those 3 Shredders remind me of something in a Marvel comic, but that definitely came out like 10, 15 years later after.
Okay. Maybe that was inspiration. This inspired that, maybe.
Or probably even closer to 20 years ago. I don't know exactly what year this
Okay.
but it is, though. Yeah, it reminded me of something from Marvel. But anyway, yeah, let's get into it. Issue 21, the fight just picks up right from where the last issue ended. The turtles start fighting those weirdly shaped Shredders. Raphael ends up leaving them to go find the real Shredder. He's like, this isn't the real Shredder. Because, we see, like, one that's really bulky. We see one with a big head. And then there's this other one with, like, weird...
Zoidberg hands!
Yeah. kind of. But anyway, we see, the others are saying, like, we need to stick together as a team. And we see that they're struggling facing against those other Shredders. Anyway, meanwhile, Raphael gets ambushed by 4 special ninjas. Actually, I noticed afterwards they were called elite ninjas.
Yeah, they have guns.
Not the ones in the dojo.
Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, he ends up fighting these special elite ninjas. Their kind of lower parts have like the special Shredder style masks that he wears, like here.
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah, and having hoods and everything. But anyway, 4 of them ambushes Raphael, and start beating Raphael. He gets knocked down, and then Leonardo intervenes and starts helping Raphael. So now the turtles are split up. Go back to Mikey and Donatello, where they're struggling against their foes. They're able to best 2 of the Shredders, while the foot soldiers then intervene and start shooting at them. Now, the foot soldiers with the guns.
Yes, that's right.
However, Michelangelo and Donatello are now pinned down, and we then see Raphael makes his way to them, but the area is too open as they're in that cargo bay, and they're just closing in, shooting them as they're all taking cover. We then see Leonardo's off on his own now, and he then finds Oroku Saki, aka Shredder. Where Shredder then reveals he was put back together after their first encounter through special means. What I was just talking about a moment ago about how I guess Foot Clan has really special technology that,
again, though, aliens, man, like,
that's the thing.
It's got to be all connected, man.
It's definitely the common thing now, though, that we know of them to being allied from the get-go, right? Like, that's definitely how, the cartoon,
Yes,
it began that way, and I think the cartoon was out at this time too. Interesting.
Yeah, probably. I believe so. Yeah.
So, but anyway, he reveals he was put back together, and he then reveals himself even more to Leo, showing his burned body, which to me very much reminded me of how we think of like of Deadpool,
Yeah.
seeing how his body is all messed up,
scarred and stuff,
scarred and just messed up. But anyway, cut back to Donatello and Michelangelo. They're pinned down. Then we see Raphael come in using this like rover with all these arms to be used as a distraction.
Love it.
Cut back to Leo and Shredder, and that's where their duel begins. Huge fight where they seem to be honestly even matched for the most part.
Yeah.
You do see, though, if anybody has an edge, it's definitely Shredder, as he definitely did knock down Leo at one point. And we can see that Leo's getting tired. Cut back to the other turtles, where we see their battle still going. The rover crashes, and then that's when Raph takes out this big rocket launcher, and he ends up shooting this tower that's full of like these chemicals of sorts that then starts coming down. Shredder and Leo's fight still is going, and their fight went on. I didn't mention this in their initial bit though, but their fight went from like one room to another room.
Yeah, it was one of those like epic, like video game fights or something where you go from one part to the next.
Yeah. So anyway, in the third stage of the final act of the boss fight here, they're on the rooftop. So anyway,
third form.
Yeah. Shredder's third form here. They're at the rooftop battling it out. Then all of a sudden, we can tell that they're getting exhausted at this point too. But then all of a sudden, the chemicals come dropping down between the two, crashing into the roof, and crashes into the building. The next thing we know, as they're still going at it, the building then explodes, and we just after that giant explosion of the Hudson block being no more, we cut to the turtle lair, which brings Leo and his brother's Shredder's body, and they send him off. And this is an interesting way too, of where they really honored, I guess, Shredder in this way too, because they sent him off in that way of laying him on the boat and burning the boat.
The Viking funeral, as we
sure.
generically call it, even though this is obviously a Japanese culture thing, but we generically call it a Viking funeral. I think it's just a respect thing,
Yeah.
I mean, especially for Leo, where he put up a good battle and ultimately lost, because of not necessarily a technicality, but outside forces helped Leo, so
right. Yeah,
so
it's
it's a little
definitely
bit
very
of
interesting
respect.
because we got a shift in the change of, instead of Raphael being by himself, we end up seeing Leo taking that challenge. As we could tell, a big part of the story was that Raph got to Leo about what he said at the beginning, as we were talking about with their argument at the beginning of saying, "Are you really fit to lead us anymore?" And that really motivated Leo by this point of the story. And I think that was a nice kind of little full circle moment, as that's really the main bit of story in this issues, is it's just really action packed. Where I do feel like as if those Shredders got beaten quite easily. Because at first they're like, "Oh, those look kind of cool," and then they're like, "Oh yeah, they're beaten," third of the way through the issue. They're done for already. But yeah, I don't know. Like, these are just, it was quick.
It was a very quick arc. I was surprised with how quick it was. I thought them coming back to New York would be a much quicker arc. I was very surprised Shredder
Much bigger, yeah.
dies at the end.
It's really interesting the direction that this all takes, because we're at a point too of where it's like where the series goes on from here is very interesting, because if we were to continue with the mainline stuff, it's different writers and stuff. It's not Eastman and Laird.
Yeah, so
focus on their main numberings, but then also because they didn't come back until for like another 30 issues for a giant arc, which was what ended this main run. And so we'll get to that eventually. But it's Turtles have had a very interesting history, and I think this definitely shows a part of it. Is this was Eastman and Laird worked together again on this, and even then they said it felt different than when they last worked together in like issue 12. And yeah, so Turtles forever changed after this, I think, which is
yeah, I'm gonna be intrigued to see where they go from here, because villain arc wise, I mean, obviously now we know they can clone Shredder, so I'm sure we'll get another Shredder. That's obvious.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting because we have so much to go, lots of options as far as what they could do, and now that they're back in New York, it's going to be really interesting to see once we get to that point of other writers handling it, how the other writers handle them being in New York. So we're back in New York for now, or at least we'll circle back to that shortly, as we got some, it's an interesting bit of. Where we're going next will be a little interesting. So we'll see how it all goes. So,
yep.
But yeah, until then, I don't think there's really anything else to say, is there?
There's one tidbit that I find interesting.
Yeah.
That's written in the annotations that from pages 35 to 38, there's two of the third issue.
Okay.
There is a single page spread for those 2 pages each one, and what he says, what Laird actually says, or maybe it's Eastman, whoever wrote the page annotation said, I think this may be the first and only time in all of TMNT books where one 2-page spread was immediately followed by another. Just something very tidbitty and interesting.
That is an interesting little tidbit to end off on, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, this was a awesome, very quick, fun 3-issue read. Great to see the Turtles back in New York. It'll be very interesting to see how it happens next. It'll be interesting to see how the other writers take over after this.
Good way to end a volume.
Absolutely a good way to end the volume. And next time, we'll be back with more Turtle action. So be sure to stay tuned for that. But until next time, thank you for sticking around. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And we'll see you all next time in the Dingus Den. Bye, everybody.
Cowabunga!
Cowabunga, dudes!